welcome everyone to the brand new series where we go over Python cookbook. I will be your instructor Hamza, and I will help you go over the chapter 1 of this book. Now, the very first topic that we're going to be talking about is the unpacking a sequence into a separate variables. Now, what does unpacking mean in Python? Well, it refers to having a list of numbers and assigning those numbers into separate and unique variables that we can later on use in our codes. Now, sequence in unpacking allows those variables to be used in different methods which will return other sequence of objects. A sequence is a positionally ordered collection of items, and we can refer to any item in the sequence by using its index numbers. So sequences could look like something of a box, a list which would contain, for example, Python, or how we can unpack in Python. Let's say each of these words are different numbers or different items in a list, and we want to assign these individual items to other variables that we can later on use individually. It could look something like that, like in a list we saved the year, the month, or and a day of the date. Now when we refer to a year, we would get the actual year, then the month, or we could look for the day separately. Now, unpacking in Python refers to an operation that consists of assigning iterables of values to tuple, which could be then later on assigned to different variables. Now, what would this look like in a code? So let's look into the code part of this assignment. Let's say, for example, I have a list which is S equals to, let's say this list would equal to a date which I want to save as in a month, which would be, for example, February. Then the date would be 21st, and the year would be, let's say, 2022. Now, how would I assign this to an individual variable and later on use those variables in my codes? So here I could directly put it as in, the first thing is the month, then the second variable would be the date, and the third variable would be the year. And I could just simply put an equals to the list. Now, what this would return is, let's say, print the month, date, lastly, print the year. Now, what I have done here is this. First, I have declared a list of datas that are 2/21/2022. The first one is my month, the second one is the date, and the third one is year. Now, we could also assign this as in like month is equal to S, then put those index in a square brackets. But except instead of putting in 3 different lines, I could just assign the whole the 3 variables in a single line using this short code here. And if I print this out, this would look like this. The 2, first I printed out the month. The month was 2nd or February. The second one was the date, which is 21st, and lastly the year is 2022, which I assigned over here. Now, any number of sequences can be unpacked into different variables of our choosings. Now, what would we do if we don't want to use a variable and we still want to get the number after that? Let's say the before that we have a time. For example, let's say the time was 23rd. Now we don't want to use that 23 in our data, but we want the number next to it, which was the 2 or the month. Now we over here we could just use a throwable variable. A throwable variable could be, for example, an underscore, which we don't want to use later on in our code, but we still want the variables or the numbers after that. So we could just use this throwable variable in the code, which you can see would still give us the output that we were looking for. There is no special syntax in Python that we could use as a throwable, so we would just use an underscore or some other initial or a number that is legal in Python. Uh, and there's another thing we could do in Python using this unpacking is, let's say we don't have a list in S. Instead, we have something called, let's say, hello. Now, we could easily assign these to individual variables. Let's say I want A, B, C, D, E is equal to S. Now, what this would give us is when we print out, let's say, individually all these variables, we would get something of the same nature. Now, if we print this, we can see that we still get these individual indexes from the list. And the list could contain anything from numbers to floats to strings. It could also contain a list within a list. So there's no restrictions into what kind of variables you could save in that list. But I'm expecting you guys already know that much of information from the Python basic course. So the next topic that I want to talk about is the unpacking elements from iterables or from arbitrary length. Now, the example that I gave before is when we knew exactly how many outputs there was in the list. But what would happen if we don't know how many outputs there are or how many indexes there are in the list? How could we use those numbers when we don't even know what index we want to look into? So there's an easy solution to that problem. If you look at the code, we could see that this L array contains two lists within it. The food, pizza, pasta is one list, and another list is chain and 25. Now, if we want to print food, it's like X and Y, and print food XY, and def print age, A prints chain and A. What this means is when we want to print food, we would print the first one, and when we want to print the second one, we would get chain and A, which gives us an output of the first list and output of the second list. Now, let's see how this would look in code. Let me just remove this all. Now, let's say I have a list where there are 10 numbers. This number is S is equal to 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, as to 10. Now, let's say we don't want the 10th number and the first number in our list, and we want to find the average of 2 to 9. Now, how could we get this? The easiest way to unpack this would be to use a star expression. Now, this would look something like this. Let's say first, then use the star expression, middle, and last is equal to S. What this does is this assigns 1 to first and 10 to last, and everything between those is in the middle. Now, how could we find the average of this? We could use a built-in average function, but let me show you how average function works in Python code. I have written a small code which would return the average of 2 to 9. So we just get this middle variable and we just pass it to average, and when the average receives that middle list as an S array, we just go over the array and add it to sum, and we just return the sum divided by the length of the array. Now, one of the fun facts is that when we put a star expression after the variable, star expression, and followed by that with the variable, it would make the middle of that variable into an array, and we could use it to store different kinds of information. For example, if we want to store information about an individual's phone numbers, for example, how would that look like? Let's say, let me just clear it up. Let's say we want to record, say, the code is of Mike, okay, and his email address would be mike@gmail.com. Then let's say we want to save his phone numbers. Let's say the first phone number is 123 456 789, and he has a secondary phone number which would, let's say, 987654321. Now, we only need Mike's name and Mike's email address, and we want to store all his phone numbers in one simple data structure. Now, we could easily assign name and email, but when we want to store those phone numbers in a single data structure, we don't have any other way other than using the star expression here. Star, let's say, phone is equal to record. Okay, so what this does is it assigns the name Mike to the name variable, then the email would be saved in the email variable, and the last two phone numbers would be saved in the phone array. Now, if we want to print this out, what would this look like? It's print name, print email, and lastly print phone. As you can see that when we printed out the name, it gave us the name. When we print out the email, it gave us only the email. But when we printed out the phone, with that has this star expression on it, we get these two phone numbers as an array over here. We can also individually access this array list using the index number of, let's say, we print out the phone or the list phone, and we want the number that is in the 0 index. So it would give us the number that is in the zero index, which is the first number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is the first video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.